Welcome, it's Indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Ritchie. We got a lot on the agenda today. Breaking down news of the day, we have none other than Dina Sayegh Doll, attorney at law, legal analyst. Should be fun. Also, in the bullpen, Gabriella Hoffman, commentator Young Voices, she wants to debate about gun rights in America, in particular, constitutional carry. Top story of the day. Former President Donald Trump at it again, telling people they need to lay down their lives because of critical race theory. Here it is.
Getting critical race theory out of our schools is not just a matter of values, it's also a matter of national survival. We have no choice. The fate of any nation ultimately depends upon the willingness of its citizens to lay down, and they must do this, lay down their very lives to defend their country. If we allow the Marxists and communists and socialists to teach our children to hate America, there will be no one left to defend our flag or to protect our great country or its freedom.
Yeah, a lot of dog whistle in that speech. Once again, Trump wants to incite people to do violence for him because, as my grandmother would say, he won't bust the soft side of a grape. So now he's telling people to go after a fantasy. Critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 education. I will prove it on this segment. Before I go there, remember he said it is for our national survival. Do you think he's talking about all Americans or just a particular, I don't know, demographic? You remember he said that he is in fact a nationalist during a speech while he was president of the United States. This man is violent. He's a criminal, a thug. Let me remind you of some of his greatest hits.
The president praised a Montana congressman for assaulting a reporter last year.
Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. But I had heard that he body slammed a reporter. You just see him thrown in, rough. I said, please don't be too nice. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, you know, the way you put their hand over. Like, don't hit their head and they've just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away, okay?
President Trump escalating his war on the media. Tweeting a mock video showing him outside a wrestling ring, tackling and punching a man with the CNN logo covering his face.
A demonstrator walking out gets sucker punched. Multiple cameras at the North Carolina rally capturing the assault as it happens.
During the campaign at some Trump rallies, there were outbreaks of violence against protesters. At times, then candidate Trump appeared to encourage it.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? We're not allowed to punch back anymore. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
The Secret Service investigating this incident where one of their agents slammed to the ground a photographer from Time magazine who clashed with the agent.
The president in no way, form or fashion has ever promoted or encouraged violence. If anything, quite the contrary.
Lies, Huckabee, all lies, and you know it. Now, remember also, Donald Trump is the one who told the rioters who committed an act of domestic terrorism against the United States Capitol to do so. He even said, I will be there with you, which was another lie. He has now toyed with the idea of giving them a pardon if he's elected president again. Back to the original commentary that we're talking about. Donald Trump telling American citizens to literally lay down their lives to stop people from teaching something that is not taught in K through 12 education. Former President Donald Trump called on his supporters to lay down their lives to fight against critical race theory during his rally in California. This happened Saturday night. The former president rallied his base by criticizing Republican lawyers, Republican lawmakers who have opposed him, and doubled down on his hardline conservative positions, including CRT, which is the study of institutional racism in the legal system. The subject has emerged as a hot button issue for conservatives who argue it is divisive and should not be taught in schools. Once again, it is not taught in K through 12 education. During the rally, Trump invoked CRT as being a matter of national survival, calling on his supporters to fight to keep it out of our schools. He also attacked GOP South Carolina lawmakers who previously have been critical of him, including Representatives Tom Rice and who voted, to impeach him, and Nancy Mace. Now, let me remind you, this is all about personality. This has nothing to do with people. This has nothing to do with policy. Donald Trump attacks people not based on principle, not based on policy, but based on personality. If they do not like his personality, he will not like them. He will turn the party, the Republican Party, against that person. He does not care about the Republican system or values. And here's the reality. For Republicans who say they do, they really don't. Because if you actually cared about the values of your party, you would not have allowed a charlatan like Trump to hijack it. If you actually cared about the proclamation of your platform, Donald Trump would have never been able to shrink it to meet him. It's all lip service. There's more. Critical race theory, for the record, does not attribute racism to white people. Some people are surprised to know that. It does not attribute racism to white people as individuals or even as a group. Simply put, critical race theory states that United States social institutions, criminal justice systems, education, labor markets, housing, and healthcare are laced with racism embedded in laws, regulations, rules, culture, and procedures that lead to differential outcomes by race. Sociologists and other scholars have long noted that racism can exist without actual racist people, a point I've made right here on Indisputable. Now remember, Trump is telling his followers they must lay down their lives to stop critical race theory in K through 12 education. Have you ever pondered on this? If it's such a problem, why don't we hear K through 12 educators telling us it's a problem? Teachers nationwide said K through 12 schools are not requiring or pushing them to teach critical race theory. And most said they were opposed to adding the academic approach to their course instruction, according to a survey obtained by NBC News. Critical race theory is a high academic, advanced theoretical construct of study. It is not and has not been utilized in K through 12 education. Despite a rolling culture war that was blown up at school board meetings and led to new legislation in state houses across the country, the responses from more than 1,100 teachers across the country to a survey conducted by the Association of American Educators, a nonpartisan professional group for educators, appeared to suggest that the panicked dialogue on critical race theory made by lawmakers and the media does not reflect the reality of American classrooms. Here's another note for those who are keeping up with this. You know, all of these bills that call themselves anti-critical race theory bills or bans on critical race theory, guess what is absent in the language of the legislation? The terminology critical race theory. They are using it once again as a pretext to create the context to stop teachers from teaching real history in the United States of America. What they don't want to happen is for teachers to be empowered to teach the truth about American institution and American history. Ms. Doll, what are your thoughts here?
I would say to his supporters, why don't you wait to see if he's gonna lay down his life before you do that? Because you know he's not that kind of leader. And we have actually a real problem with violent threats against our school board members. So him saying that in that context is very dangerous. We've seen him inciting violence and then it happening with the Capitol riot and other situations. The Department of Justice has actually opened up an investigation because of the number of threats against them. And I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. School boards are mostly women. It is more women make up school boards than any other political organization in our country. So he's threatening violence, against mostly women. I feel really bad. These people are not usually paid or at all. I mean, they're true public servants, and they are getting really harassed on a daily basis. Never mind our teachers as well. So, I'm glad that you're bringing this out, because this is a really legitimate problem, this kind of threat of violence against them.
Yeah, you make a really great point about the people who serve as members of school boards. They are typically not career politicians. They do not make a lot of money. Some places don't pay them anything but a stipend for traveling to the school board meeting. And you're right, you have a lot of women who are elected to that position, a lot of individuals who are parents decided to run to become public servants, and you have some who are school teachers who decided to run and seek office as a school board member. We're gonna continue to track this. Obviously, this is going to start a new wave of violence. It is unfortunate, but it is real. We have seen this happen time and time again. Let me take you to the state of Florida. Yeah, you see that guy? Dumb as hell. That guy had meth. He didn't believe it was meth after he bought it. So he called the police to have them check the authenticity of the meth he had purchased. You guys think I'm playing, I'm dead serious, okay? His name is Thomas Eugene Colucci, 41 years of age, has been charged with possession of methamphetamine and 2 counts of possessing drug paraphernalia. Let me give you the background to this. Okay, so that guy called 911 to ask for a quality control check on the meth he had just bought, saying he wanted to protect others from buying fake product. Police obliged, coming to his door and testing the meth. That was his request. They obliged. They found out that the meth was actually legit, and then they arrested him. The 7 p.m. call came to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office on Thursday. The department said in a statement, they had to release a statement. They said upon arrival, deputies met with Mr. Colucci. Colucci told deputies he had recently purchased methamphetamine from a male he met at a local bar. And after having used a bit of it, he believed it was actually bath salts. Colucci went on to tell deputies he was an experienced drug user, having used methamphetamine in the past, and knew what it should feel like. Put up his picture again, okay? He's either one of 2 things. He's either the dumbest meth head walking, or he believes he is the most privileged meth addict of them all, who would believe they can call the police and get them to do a quality control check on your meth. He brought out the suspected products, 2 small baggies containing a white crystalline substance. He handed them over, explaining that the substance had not provided the sensation he was expecting. Worried that other people might buy the fake methamphetamine from the same person, and determined to protect fellow contraband buying humans, Colucci wanted the meth tested and his seller held accountable for any irregularities. Put up his picture again. Just a regular community leader doing what he can do, okay? Colucci wanted deputies to put the person in trouble for selling dangerous drugs. However, he was unable to provide a name or any contact information for the individual. As requested, the deputy performed a field test on a sample of the white crystal-like substance from each of the baggies. They all tested positive for methamphetamine. Now, here's what happened, okay? It wasn't that the meth didn't work good enough, it worked too damn good. It worked so good that he called the police on himself. Ms. Doll, as an attorney, I gotta ask you this question. Let's say the police officers arrive, they take the baggies, they test it, and it actually is bath salts. This man has now done a great community service, because bath salts have been known to be more extreme as far as impact than meth? Does he still go to jail, or does he get hailed as a hero?
I think we had to realize too, this is Florida. I'm thinking he doesn't go to jail, he's a hero. And this was sounded very like Karen adjacent to me, this guy.
I wonder when he got arrested. We don't have the video. I hope we get that video very soon. But I wonder, did he go, wait a minute, guys, why are you locking me up? Why are you arresting me? I called you all, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. All right, very sad story. An off-duty cop put his neck on the knee of a 12-year-old girl inside of the school cafeteria. Let's go to the video, here it is. Let's put up the still that was captured by a cell phone inside of the cafeteria. The cop is an off-duty Kenosha cop. He is now under fire after this video surfaced. This incident occurred at Lincoln Middle School on March 4th. There was a fight. There was an altercation. It happens. The 12-year-old girl remains unidentified. She is a minor. Here's the report from ABC News. According to KPD, after a fight broke out between two students in the cafeteria during lunch, Kenosha Unified School District employees, including the off-duty officer, intervened and one staff member was injured. Attorney Drew Devaney, who represents the girl and her father, Gerald Perez, told ABC News that the girl suffered injuries to her head and neck and is currently receiving medical treatment. Perez told Milwaukee ABC affiliate WISN in an interview published Tuesday that his daughter was arrested for disorderly conduct. When sharing videos of the incident on Facebook, Perez expressed outrage comparing the image to George Floyd. Amid a national push for police reform after Floyd's death, Wisconsin banned the use of police chokeholds in June 2021, except in life-threatening situations or in situations where a police officer had to defend themselves. Chokeholds include various police neck restraints. The officer is 37 years of age with 4 years of service at KPD, that's according to the police. But when requested by ABC News, the officer's identity, they declined to comment. They're hiding them. Police did not comment when asked if there were any updates on the investigation and would not confirm the 12-year-old was arrested for disorderly conduct. Lack of transparency across the board. Tanya Reuter, the chief communications officer for the Kenosha Unified School District, told ABC News on Tuesday that the officer is a part-time KUSD employee who was hired as an off-duty Kenosha cop and is currently on paid leave from the district. Kenosha Police Department released a statement on Monday saying, and I quote, KPD together with KUSD is investigating the incident in its entirety while being cautious not to make conclusions based off of a small piece of information shared on social media. Both agencies will look to our respective policies and procedures for guidance in this circumstance. It is the highest priority of those officers who work in our schools to provide a safe and secure learning environment for our children and staff. So let me be very clear. There's another story that happened this week of a deputy sheriff who put his knee on an adult black male. That deputy was fired, immediately fired, because it was considered excessive force. It was for less than an ounce of marijuana. We have been here before. This is a 12-year-old child. These are typically against protocol, if not against the guidance of the department. And every resource officer who gives a damn about children will tell you we don't put our necks on children, the ones who actually care. Resource officers are really good cops, most of them. I know some of them personally. They look at their role as a role of mentorship, not arrest. They do not want kids to fear them. They want kids to respect them, listen to them, and they are able to provide some guidance to them. But this, you don't put your neck on you don't put your knee on the neck of 12-year-old children. What's hard to understand about that? You're a grown ass man. Ms. Doll, thoughts on this case?
I agree. I mean, he did this while he was off duty, so they might try to claim that this wasn't part of his job. But if he's willing to do this, he's gonna be doing this while he's on duty too. Right. So this should be a fireable offense for the police department. And the fact that he did it at all, especially to a child, after it was banned, after Chauvin's been convicted, the fellow officers convicted, I don't know what else, would discourage somebody from doing this. So if he can't kind of rein himself in and have some self-discipline, then we shouldn't be giving him a badge. We shouldn't be giving him a gun. This may have protected others, and I hope they see it that way.
Yeah, and once again, this is a scenario where the policy is right. The written policy is correct. I agree with it. But the culture is opposite of the policy. And culture eats policy alive any day of the week. So you can't talk about transforming. You have to start talking about transferring. You now have to talk about replacement and not simply talk about reform. It's time to get a new breed of cop in those positions rather than trying to reform the old breed of police officers who obviously are not willing to change. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, Crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, right, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Welcome back. It's indisputable. We got a lot of show left. Let me remind everyone, the big homie, J.R. Jackson, the watch list, all right? Make sure you tune in live, tyt.com/watch list to follow, subscribe, support. Make sure you do that. A lot of content, 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Find out the stories you need to pay attention to: news, politics, culture, current events, sports, and more. Also, podcast launch, The Habituation Room, Francesca. That's now part of TYT. It's a big deal. Join Francesca and her famous progressive friends as they deliver an hour of laughs and analysis. Some of this stuff you have to laugh, not to cry, all right? Make sure you check that out. Anywhere you can get a podcast download, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast, is part of the TYT network. Canvas 2022, help amplify the message of progressive candidates and their races. Mainstream media will often ignore progressive voices, but we know the TYT audience is too strong and can make a difference in the upcoming midterm elections. Learn more, real simple, tyt.com/canvas 2022. All right, good comments. I can read some, can't read all of them. Just Be Anti-Racist says, for Trump and the right-wing, national survival is code for white people. Ding, ding, ding. That's right. Lynn, how do you say racist without saying racist? Yeah. Mickey C. the Silverhead Dragon says, lay down your lives while I cower in my bunker and shake in fear during a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest. Lay down your lives while I say I'll march with you on January 6th. Then slither into my limo to rush to the White House so I can safely sit on my ass to watch you commit a sedition that I incited. Yeah. Colorado Blue Blazer regular. Thank you, Doc. I needed this belly laugh. Oh, damn, the stupidity that walks among us. Yeah, Eric, the Uper Dragon. I tell you what, at least we know where all the dumbass criminals reside. Florida. You crack me up and scare the hell out of me at the same time. Yep. All right, let's go to Twitch. Azriel Bryson, I think. He doesn't care about the poor white people. He just wants money. That's right, he doesn't care about people at all. Exactly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
You get off my. Don't touch me. That bitch did the same everything to me. You need to leave the store. What are you doing?
This Karen has been dubbed bra section Karen. Here's what led up to that.
Yeah, I think I might take some bras too, because like you can just steal now, right?
Well, stealing is never okay.
No, but they're looting everything.
We tried to help her find a new bra after she complained about the one she bought.
Don't touch me, bitch, don't touch me.
We returned the bra she didn't like even though it was past the return date.
You're stealing, so you go.
I'm not stealing.
You are stealing.
Left the store?
You just said you were going to steal.
Left the store.
You just said you were going to steal.
No, I said stealing. Everybody's doing it.
Because you called everybody disrespectful names.
And they're taping me because I called one of their girls a bitch.
And don't forget that.
Oh, God. Are we snowflakes? You're such an old woman. Are we snowflakes? You're an old woman.
I have your bras here, ma'am.
Yeah, it's her over there.
It's her right there.
It's her right there. I need to sling out my store. That was assault. Fine, I will. Let's go. Bye. No, I'm not leaving. Bye. I want the police here.
Well, then you gotta call them.
Okay, I will.
Okay, well then step outside. Step outside.
Classic Karenicity behavior here. She physically attacks those who are working in a service industry. This is a clothing store. And then she says that she needs to call the police on them. After they have been courteous, by the way, and allowed her to return an item that was past due the return date. Ms. Doll, thoughts?
You know, normally I just kind of laugh at these things, but after the beginning Trump story that we had, I feel like this is a really perfect example of how people feel entitled to really hurt somebody else, whether with words or physical actions, if you disagree with them. And we can't have that. You know, we're not going to be able to coexist if we can't, you know, whatever. They may have done something she didn't like and she could have expressed that. And that should have been it. You know, why? But when we have a former president say, hey, go do violence on these school board members if you don't agree with them, we're gonna have a customer who feels like, hey, she can do the same thing. She could be violent with somebody over something as meaningless as that. Do we just completely break down our norms of society if this becomes, you know, everyone's entitled to treat people this way?
Yeah, and that's why we defend those that work in service industries. I used to work in a clothing store. All right, I used to wait tables. I've done all of those jobs growing up. And the amount of negativity and degrading that comes from some individuals who look at you less than is insane. But once again, we're the great equalizer. We provide an opportunity for correction and reflection right here on Indisputable. All right, I got something for everybody. Double dose.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Car, please. Move your car, please. Move your car. Look at her, y'all. Look at her, y'all. Look at her, y'all.
Hold
on.
That's my point.
I don't know that you live here. Same difference. I'm going about my business. Go about your business, man.
It's open all day.
Look at her, y'all.
Somebody wants to get in here and kill
all they gotta do is the first date and come right down the street
right now.
Come right to the next
That's
one.
my point.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
How does it matter?
Because somebody can go in the first gate and do whatever they want.
You stop to make a point of nothing. Move the up, please. Look, you look crazy right now. Why would you do this to yourself? And you about to go viral.
Yeah, that brother must be a prophet because yes, she is about to go viral. Once again, another Karen demanding freedom papers. And I've broken this down before. Anytime a person walks up to a black individual and demands proof of why they can be mobile, why they are walking, why they are in this neighborhood, that's the equivalent of demanding freedom papers. You have the right to be mobile. You have the right to assemble. You have the right to walk around communities. That's your right in the United States of America. But when people demand you show them some type of proof, I don't know, maybe a lease agreement, maybe an ID that shows your address. That's the equivalent of freedom papers. Let me give you some background on freedom papers. Freedom papers and certificates of freedom used to be real things in America, were documents declaring the free status of blacks. These papers were important because free people of color lived with the constant fear of being kidnapped and sold into slavery. Today it's the constant fear of the police being called on you and you being taken to jail for some dumbness. Freedom papers prove the free status of a person and served as a legal affidavit. Some individuals are still not out of that slave era mentality. Ms. Doll, thoughts about this?
I mean, absolutely. It's so offensive and the epitome of treating somebody less than, to question their ability to go about their business, as that man on the video says.
Yeah, and think about this. If 4 or 5 black people would have walked up to that white woman and said, show us proof that you are supposed to park here, that you live here, show us your lease agreement, show us your ID, she would have screamed, called 911. And those individuals would have likely been arrested for harassment. You see, the reason why it's problematic is because it would never work the other way around, and everybody knows it. Okay, we got more on the other side. It's indisputable, stick and stay.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcast and cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, the defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not seeing how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Walking a dog on the White House lawn, would that be?
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
Welcome back. It's indisputable. We got a lot of show left. Let me read some of these comments. Just Be Anti-Racist says, what is it with Karens and ladies' intimate apparel stores? I know it seems like a weird cause and effect here, doesn't it? Cray souffle. You don't say stealing in a business like you don't say bomb on an airplane or you're gone. So bye-bye, cross your heart, Karen. Yeah. Okay. A somewhere place. People are dying and she's pulling this ish. Go home, lady. Rules apply to you too. Be nice next time. Agreed. The other Karen. Leg and Killer 26, I think. That's the Karen haircut for you. Jax Drax says, just another racist being racist. Yeah, I agree. Adabomb says he gave her every chance to show some logic, empathy, and move on, but nope. Karen mode it is. Yeah. Not very surprising. Tucker Carlson receives promotion and praise from Vladimir Putin. Now, Vladimir Putin is saying, we want Tucker Carlson to run all day on all of our state-controlled and heavily influenced state-controlled media. Where's this coming from? Probably when Tucker Carlson did actually praise Vladimir Putin. Here it is.
It'd be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Has he shipped every middle-class job in my town to Russia? Did he manufacture a worldwide pandemic that wrecked my business and kept me indoors for 2 years? Is he teaching my children to embrace racial discrimination? Is he making fentanyl? Is he trying to snuff out Christianity? Does he eat dogs? These are fair questions, and the answer to all of them is no. Vladimir Putin didn't do any of that.
So according to a leaked document, Russia now wants that guy, Tucker Carlson, to be everywhere. Mother Jones leaked this. According to the Kremlin, this is essential. Tucker Carlson is now essential to Russian propaganda in Russia. I kid you not. On March 3rd, a Russian military force bombed Ukrainian cities as part of Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion of his neighbor. The Kremlin sent out talking points to state-friendly media outlets with the request, use more Tucker Carlson. Well, damn. It's a 12-page document entitled For Media and Commentators, Recommended Coverage. It is essential to use as much as possible fragments of broadcast of the popular Fox News host Tucker Carlson, who sharply criticizes the actions of the United States and NATO, their negative role in unleashing the conflict in Ukraine, and the defiantly provocative behavior from the leadership of the Western countries and NATO towards the Russian Federation and toward President Putin personally. That's from the leaked memo inside of Russia. It sums up Carlson's position. Russia is only protecting its interest. This is what he said. Is only protecting its interest and security. The memo includes a quote from Carlson. And how would the US behave if such a situation developed in neighboring Mexico or Canada? He's drawing false comparisons here, trying to create conclusions that do not fit the narrative. No other Western journalist is referenced in the memo, only Tucker Carlson. The document was produced according to its metadata at a Russian government agency called the Department of Information and Telecommunication Support, which is part of the Russian security apparatus. According to Mother Jones, anonymous source, memos like this have been common practice by Putin's administration during the war. Carlson repeatedly noted there was no reason for the United States to assist Ukraine in its battle with Russia and insisted it was not treason, it is not un-American to support Putin. He contended that Ukraine was not a democracy but a client state of the United States government. False narrative again. After Putin invaded Ukraine, Carlson shifted to a new line that the United States and the West actually goaded Putin into war and provided no explanation as to why that would benefit the US. Last week, Tucker went off about the supposed US biowarfare labs in Ukraine. It's another conspiracy theory started by Russia, echoed by China, adopted by Gabbard in the United States, and now proclaimed by Tucker. Isn't that fascinating? Let's go to the video.
Trying to use profanity on the air to describe our reaction, our jaws drop. Let's leave it there. Under oath in an open committee hearing, Toria Nuland just confirmed that the Russian disinformation they've been telling us for days is a lie and a conspiracy theory and crazy and immoral to believe is in fact totally and completely true. Whoa. You don't hear things like that ever.
Okay, all right. So the White House has already spoken about this, so has the Secretary of State. No, it is not true. It's not a bioweapon lab, never has been. Okay, the memo claims bio laboratories set up and funded in Ukraine have been experimenting with bat coronavirus samples. It cites Nuland's testimony and says the United States was involved with military biological laboratories in Ukraine that potentially posed a global threat to all of Europe. The objective of the labs is to create viruses for targeted destruction of the population in Russia. That's what the memo claims. That's what the conspiracy theory is. And that conspiracy theory, once again, comes directly from Russia propaganda machines. It is unclear whether these memos had any impact on Russia media outlets, which already were regularly citing and praising Carlson anyway. Pro-Putin media organizations in Russia may not have needed the Kremlin's recent encouragement to make Carlson a star. He already is. RT, Russia television, the Russian propaganda outlet, embraced Carlson's defense of RT after social media companies banned RT. Comment: Fox News has not commented about this Mother Jones article. For more details, go to that Mother Jones article. It is quite fascinating, but here's the reality. In the world of intelligence, you will call Tucker Carlson an willing but unwitting asset of the Russian government. He's a willing, unwitting asset of the Russian government. Now, will Tucker come out and say, I don't like how Russia is using my content. I am not a Russian surrogate. I have disagreement with Russia. Will he do any of that? Hell to the no. He won't do any of that because the guy likely is. All right, Ms. Doll, thoughts?
I agree. He knows who his audience is. As they say, they play his clips all the time. Why does he do it? Power? I mean, personal gain. So, I think this kind of lends the light to how dangerous it was that Trump started this whole fake news conspiracy. Our media, it's a fourth institution of our government, is so important. And these lies that Tucker Carlson puts out, millions of people watch him and believe it. And yes, Russia is kind of co-opting that, but what is happening here to our country also is super dangerous. I mean, we have a new lawsuit now against Fox, right, for their lies that they made during the election by the voting machine companies. And Fox might finally be held to some standard because of those lies. But the problem with Tucker Carlson is he's an opinion show, not their news show. And so he actually has more latitude in what he says in terms of liability because opinions are more protected. But are the people watching him knowing that essentially this is an opinion show and it's not meant to be facts? I mean, I could say no. People think that what he's saying is supposed to be facts and they're not. And this is really a major issue our country is gonna have to face.
Yeah, he disguises himself with the news barrier And every lawsuit Fox News has won, they have argued that no reasonable person would believe that Tucker Carlson is a factual news source. That has been the defense every single time. And they have won predicated on that defense. Now, here's the other irony connected to Tucker Carlson. He is obviously supporting Vladimir Putin. He is part of the Russian propaganda machine now, but he will still be called a patriot. Those in this country will still say he's America first, even though his own commentary is contrary to an American first agenda. All right. Racism inside of school systems, we highlight these. It is insane, it is bad, and it needs to be handled properly. Students racially harassed a black teen on the bus. Let's put up a picture of this young black teenager. This was at La Vega Middle School in Arkansas. Black teenage girl was taunted with racial epithets as she boarded a school bus, but it wasn't the first time. She's a 7th grader. Has faced all of this since transferring to the middle school in the fall. Now, let me give you some chilling detail about what happens when kids like this are bullied. The kids on the bus, they called her, put a picture back up for me. The kids on the bus, they called her things like Rosa Parks, as if that's a bad thing. And they shouted Black Lives Matter as if that's a negative. And they called her the N-word. Her name is Alyssa Shaw. Alyssa said the chants were so loud that she could not hear her own voice. Alyssa also said in October, a male student followed her, calling her the N-word and saying that he hates black people. Her mother has since pulled her out from the school. This is sad. Now, what conservatives will tell you is that this is not actually a problem in K through 12 education, even though we highlight this every week on Indisputable. They will say, no, we need to make laws to ban the teaching of critical race theory, even though it's not even taught in K through 12 education. They want you to fix things that are not broken. They don't want to fix things that are. In a letter to Becky Burris, that's the young lady's mother, the school principal said the school district investigated the incident and found violations of the school district's bullying policy. District officials told reporters they could not provide specifics on the discipline actions because the students are minors. I don't know what students were punished and not punished and what their punishments were, the mother said. It concerned me that she might be cornered or picked on again. The local police department said they opened an investigation and the students who bullied the teenager could face possible harassment charges. That's not the only school. There's another middle school, it's in Maryland. Let's put up a picture of Middleton Middle School, okay? 3 teenagers have now been charged with hate crimes after making racist threats on social media and Snapchat. They posed with guns with the caption saying, slaves run away, we finna shoot some more N-words. These are children, okay? Investigators said 3 white 8th graders at Middleton Middle School posed with weapons and used racial slurs in Snapchat posts that were later shared Wednesday in a group chat with other students. And one of the teens was immediately pulled from class after school staffers learned of the post. Authorities said one of the weapons was real, while the others were BB or airsoft guns. And one of the teens was charged with firearm possession by a minor. But investigators said the teen's parents were not liable for the child gaining access to the gun. Those teens' parents are liable for that damn racism. See, racism is learned, which means it must be taught. And typically, not 100%, but 9 out of 10, if you have a racist child, you have a racist home environment. There's a culture there. It comes from somewhere. Ms. Doll, thoughts?
You know, these children are completely captive audiences. So it does take you and all of us really highlighting their stories and helping them here. You know, the difference between Arkansas and Maryland, and the fact that the Maryland, they've already pressed these hate crime charges. Arkansas was one of 3 states who didn't have any hate crime law on its books. Last year it passed one, but it's very weak. And that could be why they haven't yet been charged. Whereas Maryland, it's a hate crime for verbally abusing, slurring someone, which allowed them, the authorities to do something about it. This highlights how important the laws we pass are. And then in terms of, I really hope the school and the cities realize that they can do something about this. It may sound trite, but reading books from various diverse authors and learning about different people's experiences as part of the curriculum, doing field trips, having assemblies, like you said, if they're not getting it from the home, introducing to people that we are all the same, really, having compassion and empathy for each other, teaching that. We can teach that in the school, and some schools are actually really good at that, and others should take the lesson from them.
Yeah, and you make a very strong point about the reality of racism being learned, right? You can deconstruct that. It is a constructed model, yes, but you can deconstruct that model. But when you eliminate books on Rosa Parks, which we have seen state legislatures do so, all of a sudden you think Rosa Parks is a negative. If you're a student, maybe a white student, you think it's a negative. You think it's something to criticize a black student about and say Rosa Parks, that's a badge of honor, damn it. That's not anything to be critical about. Or saying Black Lives Matter is somehow adversarial and a negative. Once again, you're miseducated, but you have been designed to believe as you believe. And when we eliminate curriculum that's based on true history, we are unable to unravel the mess that many of these students have been taught in their home life. Okay, Ted Cruz is upset because Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson would not drink his Colombian coffee. Here it is.
So I'll tell you a couple of interesting just moments from meeting in my office. Number one, when she was there, I offered her and everyone there some Cuban coffee. As a Cuban American, I sometimes, when people come to my office, we make Cuban coffee. And she turned down the Cuban coffee, which I got to say, anyone that turns down coffee, I'm highly suspect of. Yeah. I enjoyed the Cuban coffee.
Anybody who's an elected US senator amid a natural disaster decides to take a vacation and leave the state that he represents, I'm highly suspect of Ted Cruz when you did that, remember? Here's the truth, I wouldn't take a damn cup of coffee from Ted Cruz either, all right? So that's a criticism. He did not vote for her in her current position, by the way. He is likely not to vote and support her now. She was right for not accepting that coffee. Ted says he met with the SCOTUS nominee and she turned down his coffee, made him highly suspect. Now, I want to remind you of Lindsey Graham. Remember, Lindsey Graham said before the nominee was chosen, he said, oh, this will make the Supreme Court look more like America. That's what he said, and I told you when I read his statement on Indisputable, he'll change his mind because Lindsey Graham has no backbone. He always bends in ways that defy medical science, and he did. As soon as we have a nominee, he then says, the radical left has won, even though he voted to confirm Judge Jackson in her current position. And here's what Tucker Carlson said, need I remind you?
So it might be time for Joe Biden to let us know what Ketanji Brown Jackson's LSAT score was. What did she do in the LSATs? Why wouldn't he tell us that? That would settle the question conclusively as to whether she's a once-in-a-generation legal talent, the next learned hand.
Let me just go to Reverend Haynes on this one.
That he wants to see the LSAT scores of Ketanji Brown. Hold on, Tuck. Little Tuck. You want to see her LSAT scores?
Please make sure you check out that entire damn sermon on the Indisputable YouTube page. All right, Ms. Doll, always a pleasure having you on the show. Tell people how they can follow you, check out your great work.
Thank you so much for having me. They can follow me on Twitter, @DinaDoll1.
Awesome. All right, we got more on the other side. The bullpen is next. Stick and stay.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 20 billion views.
Damn.
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Cenk and Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted.
Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We have a lot of show left. Let me read some of these amazing comments. I will read as many as I can. TYT member, a very stable photographer member, number 2756 says, Tucker is a Russian asset. I think we kind of knew this. Miggy C, the silver-haired dragon, says Putin has continuously been running videos of Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard because they're defending Putin on the invasion. How much does Putin love right-wingers, including Trump supporting his genocide? Yeah. Rocket Reindeer, hey, maybe Tuck will move there. Line of Judah, he is a true puppet for their cause there. Travis C, mandatory CRT classes for parents of these kids. That's right. Yeah, exactly. All right, one more. Twitch. Dissident PM. Neo-fascist embracing a proto-fascist brings a tear to my eye. There you go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, we have Miss Gabriella Hoffman, commentator Young Voices, very accomplished individual. She hosts the District of Conversation podcast. Looking forward to this conversation. Ms. Hoffman,
thanks for having me.
How are you?
Doing well, Dr. Ritchie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're gonna chop it up about gun rights in America, in particular, constitutional carry laws that have been sweeping conservative states all across the country. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about constitutional carry. So if you would, give us your sentiment and I will opine.
Certainly, constitutional carry has kind of emerged as this ascendant policy. It's not a fringe policy, believe it or not. It's actually being embraced by 22 states currently, and it just makes it so you would carry a gun without a permit, but 22 states, most recently Georgia and Alabama, have adopted it. And it's certainly a topic that brings a lot of discussion, even amongst those of us who work in the firearms industry, informally and formally. But it's certainly a policy that has garnered a lot of attention, especially whether or not it leads to more crime and whether or not it allows more people to have gun rights assured to them, especially in the minority community as well. So that's kind of constitutional carry in a nutshell, but I'm happy to break it down with you.
Absolutely. Let's start from the genesis of it, okay? The genesis is the Constitution, according to those that are pro-constitutional carry. So do you agree that constitutional carry is simply an adherence to the Constitution?
I believe it does fall into the confines, especially as a guarantor of Second Amendment rights. And I understand the concern with whether or not there's formal training associated with it, that just every person would be willy-nilly allowed to have access to guns. But constitutional carry just makes it a little easier to obtain the ability or to have the ability to carry. Sometimes permits can be seen as an obstacle in terms of the cost, especially in more disadvantageous communities, especially. That's kind of an argument for seeing it being ushered in. And there's also, I think it falls perfectly along the lines of it. I live in a state where I have to go through different tests, and I have had to take my concealed carry and pay the fee and do different coursework. Virginia doesn't have that currently, but other states certainly have different rules. But I'm kind of an all of the above proponent. And if this advances the Second Amendment, as I believe it does, I can be supportive of it, even though I live in a state that doesn't have it.
You know, it's really interesting. You bring up some dynamics I would like to explore with you. Now, those who are proponents of constitutional carry, they say, well, having a gun or bearing arms is a constitutional right. And because it is a constitutional right, you should not be required to obtain a permit in order to exercise that right. You should not have the fee or the burden of paying for a permit in order to have that right or exercise that right. So let me ask you this question. Is voting a right?
Well, I'm not sure where to fall on that. I think it's essential and it should be accessible, but I believe the Second Amendment and voting are two different issues, so I don't want to stray away from.
They are two different issues. That's not what I'm conflating here. Pure, simple question. Is voting a right?
I'm not sure I can intelligibly answer that question. I think it should be easy and it should be safeguarded. And I know that there have been different debates over access issues, but more and more people are voting. We saw in the most recent election. So I'm not sure if it's a right. We don't see it guaranteed in the Constitution currently, but there are certainly laws like the Voting Rights Act and others.
You're incorrect on that. The Constitution does guarantee your protection to vote, and the Supreme Court has ruled that voting is in fact a right that citizens that are lawfully able to engage in voting do have. And since it is a right, the government must take appropriate steps in order to protect that right in the United States of America. I'm with the line of logic when people say, well, the right to bear arms is a right. True, it is a right. So is the right to vote. It is a right. It's a protected right. You have the right to vote in America. Where you all lose me at, Ms. Hoffman, is when you make the argument, which you have just made to me, that there are some people who say the fees are too high to pay for the permitting to get a gun. Or there should not be a prerequisite to get a gun because having a gun or bearing arms is actually a right. Okay, fine, you believe in constitutional carry. Well, why don't you all believe in constitutional voting? Because 20 years ago, nobody had to present an ID in the United States to vote. They simply were able to verify their information at their local board of elections and they could participate in the election. My point is a principal point. I'm making a principal argument. And the principal argument is this. Based on the study done by New York University, we have more than 3 million individuals in this country who do not have the proper ID to vote. And that number obviously skews to black and brown folks who cannot afford it, nor do they have access to some of these entities, especially those in rural areas where transportation is lacking. So that becomes a real barrier for them to get the proper ID to vote. If you're making the argument that constitutional carry is a good thing because it is in fact a right, number one, and number two, the fees associated with getting a permit can be adversarial to some communities, why is it you all don't make the same argument as it relates to voting in America?
I think the firearms community is pretty divided over that position. I don't really focus on the voting rights component. If I'm talking about Second Amendment, I largely prepare on that, but conservatives and libertarians have different opinions on that. I can tell you that. Personally, I may have a different opinion from some Second Amendment supporters, but I think there's slightly two different issues. And I think when it comes to, let's say you're talking about the identification component, there are a lot of more obstacles to obtaining a gun when a traditional permit framework is there. I have to present an ID anytime I purchase a gun, anytime I subject myself to a background check. And from what I understand with voting, having voted in many elections, I don't have to pay a fee to go vote. I just sign up online and it's really simple. And I would hope it would be a very simple process for everyone. Like I said, I think the Second Amendment is a slightly different issue. And I know Congress is debating that issue more broadly with respect to that. But I think they're slightly different, but they can certainly be debated.
Sure. Well, you don't have to, you're not mandated to have an ID. You have to pay to get an ID. And some people look at that as a fee associated with voting. I understand that argument, but once again, it's more of a principal argument. Most people do have ID. As I said, New York University cited that roughly 3 million plus individuals who could actually vote do not have the ID to do so. But let me take you to Georgia House Bill 1358, because you did cite the Georgia version of constitutional carry. Now, I have to point out the background check issue. So in Georgia House Bill 1358, it says, the House bill gets rid of the need for a license to carry a handgun permit in public. It also gets rid of the current background check requirement. This bill is being backed obviously by the governor, who is in an election against former Senator Perdue. Do you agree that these bills should eliminate the bare minimum of a background check in order to obtain the gun?
If you are purchasing a gun, even with permitless carry in effect, you still have to submit yourself to a background check. And I believe that's what the law would address too, and would perfectly keep cohesively in line. Anytime you purchase a gun, even with, let's say, carry laws in effect, it doesn't take away from the fact that you still have to subject yourself to a background check. And I understand through the Georgia law with the permitless carry bill, as much as the Alabama law, they have created certain carve-outs. So if they're losing revenue to what would be available for going through the permitting process, they have created substitute funds. I think in Alabama, it's $5 million. But for carrying There is a lot of debate over whether or not you do have a background check, but in the crux of this legislation, regardless of where it's been introduced, if you are a prohibited possessor, you're someone who previously has a crime on your record, you have a criminal record, you're barred from owning a gun or having a permit, you would still be barred even with those new carve-outs, with those new changes.
But Ms. Hoffman, in all due respect, the law makes it illegal for a police officer to even check to see if you are in fact a person that can lawfully carry. The law prohibits an officer from saying, hey, let me run a check to make sure you are in lawful possession of this weapon you have inside of this facility or outside of this facility. Number two, 40% of gun sales in the state of Georgia take place by way of no background check whatsoever, because private to private gun sales do not require a background check already in the state of Georgia. And now what lawmakers are trying to do, Ms. Hoffman, is create a special provision to even erode at that common sense dynamic. And I believe they eventually want to take this to the Supreme Court like they have done with other laws in reference to abortion. And remember, Public Policy Survey, they polled Americans. 83% of Americans are for expanding the background check for gun owners. 72% of members of the NRA are for expanding background checks for gun owners. But you have not had one Republican bill that has actually said we need to expand background checks for gun owners or those who are would-be gun owners in America. Does that not seem like a significant disconnect between the sentiment of the average American and the political class of the conservative party?
I want to address that point you mentioned about the 97% who support universal background checks. In various different polling that has been done on the issue.
Well, hold on, wait a minute. Let me correct your numbers. 83% support enhanced background checks. 97%, what the number you cited, they support background checks in general. All right, go ahead.
Certainly. Let me respond to that quickly. So in the methodology that has been done on polling relating to UBC or even so-called expanded background checks, a lot of the times the methodology is very flawed without acknowledging that there already are existing background checks in place. And when that is tested with public opinion and when people read more into it, they see that that's very excessive to what is already had. It's an issue of enforcement when it comes to background checks. And I think the polling does not recognize that. They don't take into account there already are background checks in place, whether it's for gun sales or going through the permitting process. And moreover, it has to be expanded upon a bit more with respect to that. And we were talking about private sales, even person-to-person sales do have to be subjected to background checks. It's a very small portion of it compared to where gun sales typically go, but even if you're a person-to-person, private-to-private sale, you still have to subject yourself to a background check.
That's not a requirement of the gun seller. If you are a private gun owner and you want to sell your gun or give your gun away, there is no prerequisite in the law that mandates you give a background check to that individual. And here's the irony of that. If you sell somebody a car, most states actually require that you sell that car in good faith, knowing that the person can legally operate the vehicle. But if you sell somebody a gun, there is no law mandating you to do a background check on the person you sell the gun to. Don't you find that a little antithetical to common sense and safety in this country?
I think a very small percentage of those private to private sales could result in criminal activity, but as a good faith effort, I talked to lots of people in the National Shooting Sports Foundation across the industry. They will tell you that even smaller, individual sales, person to person, they still are very subjecting to background checks. You still have to do it. You just have to pick it up at a gun store after the fact. It all has to be legal.
Okay, let me ask you about knives. Is a knife an arm? Do you have the right to bear knives?
There has been legislation passed to allow legislation to permit it. A knife is a dangerous tool in the hands of a wrong person.
So is a gun.
Certainly, but knives are actually more dangerous than AR-15s and different rifles, according to.
Wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute, madam. You said knives are more dangerous than semi-automatic weapons.
According to FBI statistics, yes.
Ma'am, cite the statistic for me.
Yes, I believe it was a 2019 or 2020 FBI statistic, and I forget the year, but and it wasn't just knives, but it was knives and clubs and other different.
Ma'am, what you're citing is an aggregate total of individuals that use particular weaponry. So we know that more people have used knives, have used sticks, etc., than have used guns. But there is no way you can use that data to say that a semi-automatic weapon is less dangerous than a simple knife.
A handgun is a semi-automatic weapon, and handguns are the most involved firearms when it comes to crimes committed by criminals.
The point I'm making. The point I'm making is, you just proclaimed on this show that having a knife is more dangerous than having a semi-automatic weapon. We know that's not the case.
But a handgun is a semi-automatic weapon as well, and handguns are commonly used.
Ma'am, I'm talking about knives in comparison to actual guns that shoot bullets. Which one is more dangerous?
It depends on the individual who's using it. A knife could be just as deadly.
Which weapon has the potential for the most carnage on average? Which one?
I think either could be dangerous. Just depends upon the person, the criminal who's using it.
Okay, so is a knife? Do you have the right to bear a knife as you do have the right to bear arms? That's the question for you now.
That's something that's being debated in Congress. Different state legislatures are passing, not so much to conceal, but whether or not you can keep it in your home. Like I said, I haven't really explored the knife issue component too much, so I don't want to give you an unintelligible answer.
Let me give you some insight, and I want you to study this when you get some free time. The US Supreme Court did settle this in District of Columbia versus Heller, where they said knives are in fact arms and covered by the Second Amendment, okay? And if you go back to your history, many of the arms or the guns in question actually had a knife connected to them. So my question to you is this: at what point does it stop? At what point do we say there has to be some level of common sense interpretation of the Constitution in order to make sure life and liberty is met as well? At what point are we okay with lawmakers or even the court interpreting the Constitution? Because you have freedom of speech, but if you use your speech to be adversarial in a criminal way against others, then the government can in fact infringe upon that freedom. So the same with guns and weaponry. There has to be common sense legislation. Nobody calls it speech restriction, but we call it gun restriction. Common sense should be common sense across the board, right?
Unfortunately, a lot of the proposals that are billed as common sense are not common sense. However, Dr. Ritchie, I've seen this argued by a lot of gun control supporters over the years that putting in universal background check, creating a restriction to AR-15s is common sense. And you talk to most people, especially those who are not as affluent and want to be able to own a gun and they want to purchase an AR-15, for example, which is semi-automatic in nature, they would tell you that those restrictions making it harder, whether there's a permit to own a gun in some states like Illinois, whether there are other obstacles to obtaining firearms, they will tell you that those laws are not common sense. So
okay, but wait a minute, let's go back to the NRA. Because you made an argument earlier, and I want to go back to it. You basically said, well, listen, the people that are polled, they may not have known about the current background laws that exist. And that may be the reason why the polling suggests that most people are okay with enhancing background checks. I want to bring you specifically to the Public Policy Polling Survey. Again, they polled all NRA members, and the NRA members, 72%. 72 to 73% said they support expanding background checks. Is your argument on my show today that members of the National Rifle Association are simply not educated enough about rifles or guns to properly answer a survey question about expanded background checks?
If it's an individual survey, it's not largely representative of all NRA members or even all gun owners. They could take a sampling, someone could claim they're an NRA member. You don't really have to show proof that you're an NRA member or a gun owner or a gun supporter. And they could selectively choose it and say, well, this is an opinion representative of all NRA members. I would caution your listeners to not believe that, because NRA members are very diverse, and even gun owners who don't belong to the NRA.
Yeah, but that's what you said about NRA members. I didn't say that. I think the NRA members knew exactly what they were talking about when they said, no, we actually support background check and even expanding background checks for gun owners in America. It's you who have suggested that somehow these NRA members are not as informed as they proclaim to be.
I never said they were uninformed. My reading into UBC and expanded background check is usually they'll poll people who are not NRA members, who are gun owners.
So they're lying. They just lie and say these are NRA members.
I don't think they lie. I think you can poll NRA members, but a small sampling of NRA members doesn't represent all NRA members.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, Ms. Hoffman. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. Nice to speak with you.
Absolutely. All right. Remember the conversation. Don't miss it. Always take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.